Hi, my name's Catherine, and I'm going to do a talk on safer relationships. If you work in trauma informed care or anything where we're helping people, we always talk about safe relationships being the most important thing, but it's very rare that people go actually in depth to what that means and how we can do better at it. And if you've looked at my website, I've been working in these sort of fields for over 20 years. Never had any training in it, never even had any conversations about it, apart from the first place I ever worked at. It's just not, we assume that people know what it means. We assume people are good at it. And in my experience, we're not. We can be doing better. So the aim of this talk is I just want to get a conversation going. I'm not an expert. I'm sharing what I've learned over the years. And I just want to get that conversation. I want as part of it. So I'm going to cover a lot. If I was delivering this training with people, which is what I do, it's over a longer period of time. We have breaks, we have discussions, we have exercises. Because this is a video that I'm, giving you to access whenever you want, you can pause it, you can come back to it, you can rewind. So I'm going to pack a lot in and give you a lot of things to talk about. And I just, as I say, want to get that conversation going, want us to prioritize it a little bit more because, as I say, we say it's the most important thing, but we don't put a lot of time into it. So that's my aim. Let me get my slides up. So I've done some slides because it gives you something to look at and to focus on, and you can always freeze it and take notes and stuff like that. So to give a bit of a summary, so you know whether you want to continue with this, I'm going to talk a little bit about why it's needed. Because we're not talking about we need safe relationships because it's nice or because we're caring people. There's actual science behind it. There's research behind it that hopefully, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but I just want to set that foundation that this is essential. It's not just something we talk about, it's not something we gloss over. But I'm also going to talk a little bit about, and what I'm going to keep referring to is why we're not prioritizing it. Because exactly as I've just said, we don't. We say we do safe relationships, but we're not continually improving. We're not spending any time actually focusing on it. We assume we know what it means. So I'm going to talk a little bit about why I think that is. And then hopefully that can help us overcome those barriers. I'm going to talk about what it means. So actually, if you're someone who's blessed to have been raised with safe relationships, to have not experienced what it feels like to feel unsafe with people, first of all, I'm overjoyed for you. But if that's you, it can be hard to understand what it actually feels like and what it's actually like for the people that we work with. So I'm going to try and do some exercises, give you some idea about what it actually feels like, what it means, what it's like from our client's point of view, which is what we all say we do, but it is about embedding it a bit more. And then some practical stuff on things, and you'll have a bit of a plan at the end that you can look at into how to improve this. So that's what I'm going to cover. It's a starter. Now, I work with adults. If you're working with children, there's still stuff you can take away from this, but there are a lot of differences as well. So I highly recommend, and I put a load of resources at the end, I highly recommend you listen to other people, get other ideas, learn from as many people as possible, but just start learning is my plan. There's always room for improvement. One of the things that I talk about is there are people that we find it easy to be safe, feel safe and connect with. There are going to be people we find difficult. The clients, the people that we're supporting who we find difficult, if we're going to do this job, we have to be able to connect with every single person. We cannot use an excuse that we just don't get on with someone or we can't connect with them. It's our job to learn how to connect and make every single person feel safe. And take what sticks. So I'm going to, as I say, a plan at the end, and it's literally going to be what one thing stuck out, what one thing, because I'm a great believer in whatever sticks is the place you need to start. And something else before we get going, and then I will get on with it, is I just want to say, if you're new to this, there is going to be a lot. And what I don't want is anybody feeling like, they're not doing enough, they're not doing good enough, there's too much to learn. Notice how, so for a starting point, is how safe do you feel with yourself? If that stuff comes up, if any negative or you start feeling anything critical of yourself or judgmental of yourself, start there. Because as we're going to show, we have to feel safe with ourselves in order to help other people feel safe. And that might be a starting point. We're all at different stages. We all have different needs. If that's your starting point, start there. And you can keep coming back. And as I say, I'll probably redo this in, I don't know, a couple of months because I've learned more. We can always do better. And when we want to help people, that's what we should be aiming for. So the why. Love this quote. This is a quote that I use with everything when we're talking about this, from Brené Brown. People do not fear being vulnerable, they fear your reaction to their vulnerability. Now, my experience, and I've 20 years working directly with clients, with people, they're desperate to tell their story. By vulnerable, what we mean is to say, all those things that you want to be honest about, how you feel, what you're thinking, what you're scared of, what you want, all that sort of stuff that we keep private because we're worried about how people are going to react. That's what this is about. Now, old school way used to be, we tell people they need to trust us. We tell people that they're safe with us. It's not about other people opening up and trusting us. It's about us proving that we are worth trusting. And that's sort of the crux of where this is coming from. So the why, apart from common sense and our own experience, because if you think about it, and we're going to look at some of this in exercises, we feel better, we feel more relaxed, we feel more confident, we do better when we are around people we feel safe with. When we're around people that we don't, and it's exactly the same with clients, just because you are a worker does not mean you're trustworthy. So we need to remember that it is that. But then if we look at the science and the research, well, child development, we know with child development that children need a safe base, they need connection, they need belonging in order to develop fully, and healthily. But also within trauma-informed, if you know much about trauma-informed, we have, again, this is research, it's not somebody's nice idea. The research is that one safe adult, at least one safe adult in a child's life that can help them with the trauma, will minimise the harm, but it's the same as an adult. And I'm going to talk a little bit on the next slide a bit more about that. But we know it's this idea that when people feel safe, that enables them to start healing and start changing. Therapeutic Alliance. So I used to do training in Therapeutic Alliance simply because I wasn't supposed to do training in trauma. So we do Therapeutic Alliance. I worked a lot in addictions. Every bit of research around interventions in addictions and in other fields, every single one, the outcome was it mattered more about the relationship that was built between the two people than it did what intervention. And there's also some great meta-analysis, Assay and Lambert, if anybody's interested in that, that talks about what is the biggest influence of change. And the biggest influence is the relationship. We know this. That's why we need to focus on it. But also if you look in neurology, biology, physiology, it all says the same. A stressed brain can't learn. A stressed brain doesn't change, doesn't heal. A little bit of stress can help, but not the kind of toxic stress that we talk about with trauma. So again, lots of physical research on how that affects the brain and how it affects how people can engage and change. But also in the business world. So I use a definition later on from a business book about trust. They know in the business world that relationships, and they actually, quite shockingly, do a lot more on how to develop safe relationships than we do in healthcare sometimes. So much research that trust and safety are the most important factors in an organisation to help people thrive, help people perform better, help people do better. Same in sport. Lots of new research in sport that if someone feels safe and trusting with their coach, they will perform better, they will do better. It's, really, as I say, there is no downside. And if anybody wants any, as I say, Google it, there is so much research on all of that. But if anybody wants specifics, please contact me. And I've just thrown this in because I know I'm a visual. When I have a visual, it really helps. So we know that as children, the brain develops from the bottom up, and this is oversimplified. It develops from the bottom up. When we feel safe, it's like our survival part is on standby. And it's there, it's ready to kick in if we need it, but it's on standby, and it means most of our energy, most of our focus, most of our functioning is in the higher levels of the brain. If someone feels unsafe, that survival part is on high alert. So everything you say, everything you talk about goes through survival, goes through, is it danger? And then is it safe first? When you're in that, you're in survival mode. And we know when we're highly stressed, it's about how do I get through this moment and survive rather than long-term planning. And a lot of our work is about long-term planning. So we need to get people having a safe brain, we could call it. But the thing is, you can't help people feel safe if you don't feel safe. And that's one of the things I love about trauma-informed work, is this whole idea that it starts with staff. It starts with us. We have to learn to feel safe within ourselves so that we can help other people feel safe. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but hopefully that visual will just give you a better idea. So why we don't prioritise? We must misunderstand what it means. So as I said in the beginning, if you've never had that feeling of being unsafe with people, it can be hard to understand what it's like for someone who's never felt safe with someone. And there can be this common misconception that, oh, if I'm nice and caring, if I'm kind, someone will feel safe. If I care, they're going to feel safe. Well, no, people who abuse are kind and caring and nice some of the time, and then they're not other time. When someone's coming to us for help, they've no idea whether that's going to be you as well. So it's got to be a lot more than that. So I'm going to talk, and as I say, do some exercises, and hopefully, because if we don't understand something, if we are in any doubt about whether we fully get it, we need to research it and we need to start learning. Because if we don't, we're going to miss people out. And then as we get on, you're going to find that actually, in order to do it well, we have to be self-aware. I've already said we need to be safe in ourselves, but also we need to be aware of our own emotions and our own reactions to people, because as you're going to see, that matters hugely. And actually, it can be quite scary looking at our own stuff and looking at what's going on. And if we're busy and burnt out, which a lot of us are, it's just easier not to. Which brings us on to the next point, that a lot of services and systems are still set up in the old understanding. And the old understanding was it's behavioural. People just need to change their behaviour. They need to do some deep breathing. They need to, change the people they hang around with. They need to, all those kind of things that were very behavioural, which work as well. But we need to get the safe relationship. They need to feel that safety first. But all our services and all the systems are built still around the old understanding. So as a service, it can be hard to completely change. And as workers, again, we stay what's comfortable. We stay with what's comfortable. The leaders of our services stay with what's comfortable, especially when you feel under pressure and you're in that survival mode. You're more likely to do what you know than change your beliefs and look at something different. So we need to, that is a barrier. It's, as I say, easy to go, but we've also got to, I'm always interested in how that parallels with the people we support. If we're struggling to change because we're under pressure, it's the same for them. Lots of understanding in there. So signs people don't feel safe yet. So first of all, just want to say that when people come in, it takes time for people to fully relax and feel safe. There are some people who, once you get good at managing your own state, and there are some people who are going to come in that will instantly feel safe with you, and we can look at the reasons why. That is going to happen. For some people, it takes time. So as I said, that for a lot of abusers, they're nice sometimes, they're obviously abusive other times. That can cause a lot of anxiety. Clients, people we're supporting, they need time to know that that's not us. What I'm saying is all these things are signs that someone doesn't feel safe, and the response needs to be to up the things that help them feel safe. In medical terms, they talk about upping the dose. We need to do more of the stuff that makes them feel safe, which again, it's not what we're used to. People come in, one of the ways people feel safer in themselves, if they get angry. And that can be physically angry, it can be verbally angry, it can be passive aggressive, it can be sarcasm. I love sarcasm, can be funny, but it can also be used as a power and a defense. Avoiding, not turning up at all, or turning up and avoiding talking about certain things. Someone's not safe. Compliance is a survival behavior as well. People just agreeing with everything you say, but then not doing any of it. People pleasing, anxiety, the poor me. So the poor me is, it's around someone who there's a solution there to the problem that they have, but they struggle to actually do the solution and come out of the situation that they're in. And also the sort of people that will quite often, say, if you cared about me, you will do X, Y, Z, or life's not fair sort of thing. Again, it's a survival strategy that they've learned. People who lie, and it really, as I say, I've worked in services for a long time, and I have heard people say, well, they'll be lying. Of course they're lying. No, people lie when they don't feel safe. If they felt safe, they wouldn't need to lie. Pretending all's fine. So if someone comes in, and I'm sure we've all done that, and it's okay to do it sometimes because there are people you don't feel safe, and there are people that, you should keep things private from, and you are allowed to. But if we're talking about, someone that we're supporting and they're hiding things from us, it's a sign they don't feel safe, and also distracting. And, you get clients coming in and they'll very good at sending you off on tangents about stuff or throwing in bombshells to get you to focus on something else. They're all signs that someone feels safe. And in the past, we may have challenged people, and we're told that, in training, it will be if someone lies, you challenge them. If someone's not being honest and upfront with you, you need to challenge them. And sometimes even punish them if people get angry. You need to tell them off. We need to set boundaries. We need to make them behave. No, what we need to do is help them feel safe. And it's our job to learn. So I am going to do another video on specifically around this, because we can deal with these behaviors and keep that person safe. So it's not about letting people get away with it. It's not about letting people scream and shout at people or continually. There are ways of dealing with that that are actually more effective, that keep that person feeling safe and deal with what's going on. And what you've got to know is when people come in, when they first meet you, doing all these behaviors, it's a bit of a test. They are testing to see how you react. So literally, as I've put there, all these behaviors are a cry for safety. They're desperate to feel safe, and they're going, we don't feel safe yet. That's all it is. It's a signal we are not safe. If you treat it in that way, they're going to learn to trust you. If you see any of this as them choosing, they're not going to trust you, and things are not going to improve, or they're just going to take a hell of a lot longer. So as I say, that is literally, it's our choice. And as I say, it's our job to learn how to manage that, just because we haven't learned that yet. And again, it's something never been taught, had to teach myself it. Now we've learned that this safety is so crucial, we need to learn what we do with it. So understanding it, well, as I've said, don't assume you know what it is for everybody. There are still people I'm learning what safety is for them. And it needs to apply. I've already said this, there are some people it's easy. The people who, traditionally we need a behavioural contract, we need to ban them, we need to do X, Y, and Z. No, we need to help them feel safer. That's what we need to do, every single person. The ones that we find hardest to connect with and manage are the people who need the safety the most. As I said, some people never felt safe, but there's also this double whammy, I think I'll put it in again, that quite often, people are taught that if they show vulnerability, they will be harmed even more, that they need to hide the fact that they don't feel safe. So we need to forget about this idea of asking people if they feel safe. We can ask people what will help you feel safe, but people are not going to be honest. I've had surveys at organisations that go, do you feel safe? People are not going to say, no, I don't feel safe. I've had supervisors I don't feel safe with. I'm not going to say I don't feel safe, and that's me who's doing this job. So what is it going to be like for clients? And one of the, and as I've put there, us just going, you can trust us, you can feel safe, it's not going to override a whole childhood conditioning to not feel safe. It's not that simple. And you've got to remember, I'm not going to get into the whole trauma-informed stuff. We've got to remember, for some of in fact, for most of the people that we're supporting, they grew up having to learn. So you've got to remember and look at it from a child's point of view. As a child, having to be able to tell whether the footsteps they're hearing are going to help them or are going to harm them. And when you get that good for your survival at reading people's footsteps, and that's just one of many, many examples, how good are they going to be at reading you? And some clients are better at reading us than we are at reading ourselves. That's what we're dealing with. If we genuinely want to help them, we need to start, as I say, taking this a bit more seriously. And I sometimes spend a bit more time trying to liken this to a phobia, because if we think about it, literally is. If someone's been programmed as a child, it's like a phobic response to not feel safe with people, especially people they don't know or people that they haven't had the correct time with and signs that they can feel safe. And if you remember the Brené Brown quote about they fear our reaction, this is what they're fearing. They're fearing that if they're honest with you, you're going to reject them or you're going to treat them differently. And all of these behaviours, sadly, I've seen in services. So you get workers that are, I can't work with them because of X, Y, Z, or they told me this and I, feel uncomfortable with them. That happens. That is a learning point. These are all learning points. As services, we need to help people feel confident. We need to give people the skills. We need to give people the support. We need to be focusing on how do we help people do that. Even the opposite way of if somebody shares something and then suddenly you're all like, oh, you okay? You all right? Let's ringing them up all the time, checking on them, thinking they're, more vulnerable than they are. They'll pick up on that. And please don't think that, I've had people in the office really, really horrible about clients, and then they go, but I'd never say that in front of them. They know. They can tell. We need to get past that. They think you're going to harm them. They've no reason to know. They don't know you. And let's be honest, in a lot of services where you've got, we call them behavioural contracts, you do get penalised. We can't try to make it nice and consequences, but is that going to look like harm to them? I worked a lot in addiction services. If you prescribe in, if someone comes in and they're honest that they're struggling, are you then going to increase their methadone or buprenorphine pickups? Because to them, that could seem, no matter how much we justify it, is that going to seem like harm to them? And I've had people say, I'm not going to be honest in future. I'm going to lie and say everything's fine. Otherwise, that's the last thing we want. But that is what we've just got to check out. Judge them. It's a really hard one and it comes with experience. And again, we need to be training people. I've been in situations where I've literally had clients that have said the most awful things that they've admitted are not true, but they say them to test my reaction. That literally they've said that they were trying to test me and see, can I hack it? Can I take what they're going to say? And they might try and shock you. But we can also judge people in other ways. I watched a video it was actually couples counselling. And this is the nth degree, because that's why I say start where you are, and there's so much we can learn. But there was a woman who was highly traumatized, and her partner was saying to the therapist, is there better ways that she can deal with this? And the partner who was traumatized got really upset and said, that feels like a judgment. That feels like you're telling me that you don't think I'm doing good enough, that I can do better. It might seem small, but that's what we're dealing with. These are the people we're supporting. And to them, it's not small. It's exactly the same with, when we say to people, and it is a natural reaction, and I'm not in any way saying I don't still make mistakes. But if somebody's angry and you say, calm down, what are you doing? You're actually saying, your reaction is wrong. We don't trust you and your reaction. That is how people feel. That you're telling them they're wrong to be unhappy, instead of there are other ways of dealing with it where they don't feel judged. And then there's obvious judgments about actually saying to people how bad they are. And that's what the shaming is. Is people feel a lot of shame that have had trauma, and at the root of it is they feel like a bad person. If are like, and examples, and I've seen this where somebody comes in a waiting room, they're angry, they're kicking off. That needs containing. Of course it does, it needs dealing with. But if you shout at them, and I've seen it where people have literally, how dare you come in here, you better shut up or get out. This is workers. You are humiliating them in front of other people. That is not how you deal with it. There are other ways you can shame people. It's just, we've just got to be so careful and prioritize making people feel safe. Making things worse. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but this is what people fear. And that's why sometimes even I've talked to people and they've said, they've been feeling suicidal and they've not told their worker because they feared what the outcome would be. And I'm all for safeguarding. I think I've just seen so many different sort of trigger points where the same thing can happen with different people and it's different severity. And I do think a lot of it comes down to, and knowing that I've worked with places, is that sometimes we're more worried about covering our backs than we are about what's doing the best for someone. Are we going to get in trouble? And we've got more fear about that. And certainly even on a higher level, when we've got pressure to make sure our notes are defensible and make sure that, it used to drive me potty having to write reams and reams of notes just in case the 1 in a million chance there was ever something happened in the future and it went to court. We've got to get that fine line right and be unpredictable. So I've said, abusers kind 1 minute, not the next. And that includes if we are calm and kind 1 minute and we're stressed and a bit snappy the next. We're human, of course we are. We're going to have different reactions. That's where it's about learning how to manage your own emotions. Because that's, one part of your day, it's this person's whole life. So these are, again, it's just things to start thinking about. So I've said about the double bind, that people, if they show vulnerability, and this idea of safe, it's not what you think is safe. And it's not our place to decide whether they feel safe. We've been through the signs. It's about their experience, not ours. So even that you are safe now, there are some people that ain't going to work with. It doesn't matter whether they are safe. If in their head they still don't feel safe, they're not safe. And again, we can always sit down with people and say, what would help you feel safe? What's going on? Part of it is, well, we're going to get on to what the sort of things that help people feel safe and the way that we can interact. And it's about taking that and making it your own. It's not about being robotic. Right, so a bit of an exercise. I'm going to do this exercise. And what I suggest is that you pause and you think about the answers. And if you don't want to do that, then I really, really urge you to think about why you're avoiding doing it. Because again, I've got this big thing about if we're not prepared to look at ourselves, should we really be asking other people to? We've got to have that kind of thing. So first bit, think of someone you feel uncomfortable around, who's critical, well, you can read it, judgmental, they might have harmed you. I want you to think of something minor. So think of maybe colleagues at work. And I've certainly worked in places where I've not felt safe with colleagues, sadly too often. Think of that situation. I do not want you to think of anything high level. Just think of low level. I've worked in teams. When you think of teams where there's just one person I've not felt safe with and it's had an impact. So imagine they're the people that you're spending all day with every day at work. How do you feel before speaking to them? If they've been off with you and suddenly they start being nice, suddenly they start asking you lots of personal questions. How does that feel? And I really want you to sit, have a little pause, just imagine or remember a time you were in a team, you're in a work situation where, or there's a person at work you've worked with who you found most difficult. That was all there was. That was everybody you were spending your time with. Imagine that, and I want you to think, how that affects your day, but also what if that's all you knew of people? What if you had never met anybody different than those people? Think about individually on that day, what are your reactions? How do you react to things? How well do you do in your job? Do you do just as well? How do you feel at the end of the day? And really think about the effect that that would have on you. And what I want you to do is then, so this is a technique I use a lot when I'm trying to understand something, is feel a little bit of what that would like, and then times it by 1,000, times it by 10,000, times it by 1,000,000. Then you start to get an idea of what it's like for the people that we're supporting. So think of that just one person, one team that you felt uncomfortable with, and you magnify that and you start to get an idea. These people come in, they don't know you, they don't know whether they can trust you. They've had workers that have harmed them. And you're asking them personal questions, you're asking them to trust you. Not that easy. And now I want you to turn it around a little bit. So I want you to, get a bit of paper. So there's a great Byron Katie exercise that she does, which is you just basically rant about what someone's doing wrong, what they need to change, how it affects you, all that kind of thing. I want you to think about the people that you've not felt comfortable with, that feel judged by, critical, and all that kind of thing. What was it specifically that they did? Why was it? It might have been something that they did. It might sometimes we just get a vibe, we get a feeling, don't we? And we're going to get into that. But sometimes we just get that feeling that there's something not right. We don't feel safe with them. See if you can pinpoint, because we're going to get later on, we're going to come back to it, and I'm going to give you some ideas of what specifically. But literally get down, pause it again, get down on paper. They should, I'll give you a clue. One of the big things for me is if I hear people gossiping, I then think, right, I'm going to be careful what I say to them because I've got no reason to think that they're not going to be gossiping about me. So that's a bit of a clue. Are people who make fun of you or whatever, start thinking up some stuff and we will come back to it. And then what I want you to think of, so the gossip one, if I use that one, they were gossiping. That's why I didn't feel comfortable with them. They were, really laying into someone. But then I turn it around and I go, right, well, have I ever gossiped? Because I have. So it gives you that little bit of understanding what it's like from their point of view, because I know that the only times I've ever gossiped is if I'm feeling stressed and unsafe and, in a bad place. So we're sort of looking at it from both sides there. We're going, right, what makes someone feel unsafe? And can we have a bit of empathy for that? Now we're going to turn it round. So think something you feel very safe and comfortable with, that you can say anything you want to, and they will still love you, they'll still care for you, they'll still be there. And if you can think of someone, I am so happy, be grateful. If you can't, and I know there'll be people out there that can't, animals count. That's why so many of our clients, so many of us love animals. We feel safer with animals. And it's always interesting to look at why we think that is. Imagine spending all day with people. Imagine you've got your team, and hopefully you've worked at places where you have felt safe with the whole team, where you have felt very safe with people, or even one or two people. What would that be like if everybody you spent all day with every day was like that? How does it feel, and how different would it be from imagine that you're spending all your time with people you didn't trust? How would it make you behave? How would it make you feel? How would it, how would you feel going into work? How would you feel at the end of the day? How would you feel if you were struggling with something? Spot the difference. I quite often do this exercise with people, and it's spot the difference, because you're starting to get a bit of an insight again what it's like for our clients. And then to turn it around again, what makes you feel safe with them? Get really, start writing and keep writing, even when you can't think of anything else. Keep adding. because that's where you'll really start uncovering stuff. What is it about them that actually makes you feel safe with them? And it might be you've known them longer. It might be that you've shared something and it's been fun. But all those, we're going to go, well, how can we do that for clients? And again, I am going to go through a list with you about that. So hopefully that exercise has just started. It's a good one to do. It's a good one to come back. It's a good one to just start. We need to really understand what's going on so we can start unpicking this. So what does it involve to help people feel safe? Let's have a little talk about this. So I talked a little bit about internal emotional state. And I'm just going to cover why, because, this again is not, this is deep, proper stuff. It's the first thing they assess. When people are meeting you face to face, your emotions will speak before you do. Polyvagal theory. So this is, we say new, it's still decades old, but it's real medical scientific stuff about how our nervous systems work. And what they've found is that our nervous systems are talking to each other all the time unconsciously. So we can be verbally talking to someone, but our nervous system's also having a conversation. And when we meet people, our nervous systems are going, and are more welcome signs than warning signs. It's not about perfection. It's not about 100%, but it'll go, are you a safe person? Are you more safe than unsafe? And if your nervous system feeds back that you're stressed, that you don't feel relaxed, that you're on edge in any way, that other person's not going to feel safe with you. And the other thing, and there's a book at the end and stuff on polyvagal theory, what they've done tons and so much research on it that we can't fake it. We cannot fake. So if you're stressed and you're pretending you're fine, they're going to pick up on it. They're going to know instantly. And that's just going to make them more suspicious. And I'm not saying that, we immediately tell everybody how stressed we are. But again, this is about how we catch ourselves and we turn it, or how we go, I've said to clients before, oh God, I've been having one of those days, but it's really lovely to see you. So then their nervous system's like, oh, hang on, it's not necessarily about us. And that goes emotional contagion. If you Google that, loads of studies on that. And we know it's about this idea that emotions are infectious. If you spend an hour with someone who's stressed, or you spend an hour with someone who's in a really good mood, you feel different at the end of each session. And part of our work is about how we can use that to help other people feel safe by giving them enough of that safe emotion. But also it's about making sure that we protect ourselves from soaking up their energy too much and their emotion. And then communication models. So I quite like that one to use, that we know that if we ask someone how they are and they say they're fine, if they say it in an angry way, we believe they're angry. If they say it in a neutral or good way, we believe they're fine. It's the same with clients and us. So again, if they come in and they're, most clients will come in and say, how are you doing? If you're stressed, if you're judging them, or you've dreaded seeing them, or you're anxious, but you pretend everything's fine, they spot it straight away. And it's the same way, I've quite often had that conversation with clients where there are some people, and I was certainly one of them, that, completely numb your emotions and shut off from them. They're still sending out messages, and that can actually stress people more. And if they can't feel an emotion from you, then that is even more dangerous, because, it's a real alert, is that. So I'm saying this not to panic people, but just because you need to start this gradual process of just being aware during the day at different stages, because especially if you're sensitive, you pick up people's emotions as you go through the day. If we're not good at acknowledging and letting them go, it will build up, and we will take it, and you can do it in 20, 30 seconds, but you've got to have a practice so you don't take it into the next person. So this definition, as I say, Stephen Covey Jr. book, The Speed of Trust, brilliant book, business book, but they define trust as warmth plus integrity plus competence, in that order. So warmth is the emotional bit. Integrity is not about saying what you feel. Integrity comes from the word intact. It means whole. So it's literally about the whole of you being in agreement. If you are someone who is your values, your intention, your emotions, your words are in line. That's where integrity comes through. If you are being true to yourself, because you can have some of those in line and you're pretending to be someone you're not, that's not in integrity. And competency, you've got someone coming to you for help, they want to know that you can help them. And if you don't, it's about how you deal with that. So, as I say, I've worked in addictions a lot. And sometimes, just the nature, people have got to start somewhere, and you get a new worker in. Someone who's been in treatment for decades gets someone who's only been doing it a couple of weeks. And I've heard clients talk about it. Trust is not going to be there unless the worker has the sense to say, look, yeah, I am new at this, but I want to learn and I want to do my best. If you can help me, I will do everything I can to help you. And if they get the warmth and integrity bit right, you will be fine. And again, I've heard that from clients. Whereas if you come in and try and bluff it, or you haven't had the right support, people don't feel safe. And when people don't feel safe, their defense behaviors come up and it makes your life harder. So that's that definition. Familiarity. So I was always taught that familiarity is the strongest drive in people. We will stay with what we know rather than the unpredictability of what we don't know. And that's why people stay in dangerous situations quite often. But it's also why we're drawn to people like us. Because if somebody's like us, it makes them predictable and consistent. We know what to expect and we feel safer with that. That is all humans. The way that we can help with that is by you've got to connect with people on something. Find something that you can connect with. And as I've said before, for a lot of clients, it's animals. And I love animals. So I bond with most of my clients. I've bonded on, we talk about pets or, animals and our love of animals. It could be a TV show. It could be anything, music, something, but you've got to find something that you can connect with. And there's always something. And it's about, doing that. That will help people start feeling a bit safer. Acceptance. We say we accept people, but this is a really deep thing because, again, even telling people they need to change, you're not accepting them as they are. When you accept someone and you are going to care about them, whether they change or not, that's acceptance. If you believe what they're telling you, that's acceptance. So there's another great quote, I haven't put it in here, from Brené Brown, and it's about believing their reality rather than believing what we think their reality should be. So even if their reality is, say someone who is anorexic and they believe they're fat, it's not about telling them they're not fat. It is about exploring with them why they think that and what's going on and accepting that. That's what they say. And that just reminded me of a client I used to work with I used to work in mental health, bless her, and she used to talk about, she believed she was an octopus. Bizarre as it sounds, but that's how we interacted with her. You bond with people, and there's a great thing, in NLP about, they call it pace lead. You double down on connecting with people, and that's at the point that they're more likely to listen and change. But you have to fully, and with a lot of the clients we work with, we can't guarantee they're going to change. We have to still accept them as they are. It's hugely, hugely important, and it's not something we can fake. Honesty. If you can't do something, tell people. So honesty is not about, I'm irritated or you've annoyed me and I'm going to tell you. Honesty is about me going, well, actually, I'm irritated, and being honest with myself and going and dealing with it and working out, is it something you've done or is it something in me? It's about being honest with yourself. But it's also about, and I've got, I love talking about dilemmas and stuff, and I'll do some stuff on that. But sometimes we do have with clients where we've been told we have to, and I've had to give warnings to people that I really didn't agree with. We are sometimes put in that position. There are ways around it. There are ways where we can stay in our integrity. We can stay honest without being unprofessional and going, actually, I don't agree with this. We've got to find ways of doing that because people can pick up when it's not. And it can put you, and, as I say, in the beginning of my career, it puts you in some really difficult situations. because clients are not stupid. They can see, and they will say, and then it's how do you deal with this when they go, well, I can see you're not happy about this. It's really, because clients do, they care about you. When you work with them a long time, they care about you and they want you to be well as well. Stay in your emotions. So our clients will trust you when they know you are an anchor, when they know you are solid, when they know they can cling to you. Empathy is brilliant if you know how to get yourself out of it. Compassion is about seeing their emotions, but not actually soaking yourself in their emotions. And we've got to be careful with that. Sometimes we are going to get distressed at their distress. You've got to be able to keep yourself separate, because otherwise you are going to end up as wobbly as they are, and that doesn't make you safe. And also, if we get soaked up, that's when we end up saying things like, I promise you will deal with this, instead of, I promise I'll do everything I can, because we so desperately want that pain to end. Again, it's a skill we need to learn, but it's a skill that affects how safe people feel. And as I've said, every single thing is about progress, not perfection. With us, with them, we've got to be okay with where we are and then go, right, what can I learn? What can I do better? So a few more practical things that we can avoid, and this comes from Brené Brown, and I've added a few things. These are all things I've seen people do, quite honestly, and sadly, these are things that people sometimes do. And what I am going to say, I've put until they feel safe. So when I've worked with people for quite a while, and they are, I mean, sometimes, people feel safe when they're being really vulnerable and they're telling you things that, and you can see they're struggling when they're telling you, but they're telling you things they've never told people before. You can tell when that's happening. But clients that I've got a really good connection with, sometimes if somebody's sitting in or watching, it can quite literally feel like I'm taking the piss out of them. Sometimes you can joke around with people, what buttons. This is only when, you're experienced at this job and you connected with people, but you know when to push, when to pull, exactly just by looking at them sometimes, just by sensing them. And it's getting to that point, and we'll talk a little bit about how you do that. But sometimes you can do this and you can get away with it, but it's about being aware of why you're doing it. And a lot of the time it's just about checking, am I doing this to make myself feel better? So one up, if someone comes in and they're like, look, this thing's happened. If you are, oh, you think that's bad, I've had worse. It sounds like something, hopefully you're all sat there going, but I'd never do that. I've seen it in services. I have seen it. And sometimes we are tempted, because when somebody mentions something, it will bring up a memory. But it's just about checking, is that relevant? Is it helpful? Why am I sharing it? Before you do. And also turning it, even if you do share it because you think it's helpful, turn it back on them. Don't keep it about yourself. So it's minimize and dismiss. Now these are, so when I said what makes you feel unsafe, these are the two that I know are the worst things for me. And again, I've had it done where I've said to, someone in work, maybe, look, there's this situation I'm really concerned about. And I've been told, oh, don't worry, it's fine. There's nothing to worry about. It's not going to be a problem. There might not be anything to worry about. It might not be a problem. But what you've just done is, like I've said before about judging, you've just said that my concerns are not worth listening to and are wrong. That is how it feels. You've not even had the time to listen to what my concerns are and help me out of it. You just dismiss me. Or minimizing, oh, well, at least this didn't happen. It's not that bad. Don't worry about it. You're not listening to people. You're not honoring their experience. And that's what we need to start doing. Jumping in too soon and rescuing people. It's easily done. And I'm sure I've done it. Especially if you pick up on people's emotions, that we're so desperate to help them that sometimes we're reassuring them and we're jumping in and we're saying everything's going to be fine too soon. And again, we're not really listening to them. It's another skill that we sort of need, is how do we sit with things that are uncomfortable? Again, Brené Brown, as I say, brilliant stuff. But she does one that courage is choosing what's right over what's easy. Oh, what happened there? Sorry about that. Don't know what happened there. So it's just about, again, being aware of what is our motivation and is that going to help them. Be shocked or panic. And again, this is about preempting, helping workers. And I quite often encourage teams to do where we share the wisdom when we talk about situations we've been in, so that people that have not been in them, they can almost be prepared for it. I'm not talking about role play because I don't like role play. But literally, if someone, and again, it can be a testing point, but if somebody comes in and they say that, they've been hearing voices and you panic because you don't know how to deal with it, or they say something's happened and you're like, oh my God, and I've seen it or I've felt it, and people might try and cover it. It's about how quickly you can catch it and how you can turn it around and bring it back on track. Because if somebody starts sharing something and they sense that you are worried or panicking or getting anxious about it and what you should do, they'll backtrack. And I've had to do it with people where I've tried sharing something and I've ended up reassuring them that it's fine. It doesn't build trust. Saying if that were me, we should never say that. And again, it's so easy in the beginning, but even if people ask us, what would you do? We're not them. There's none of this walk a mile in people's shoes unless you've lived their whole life, the situation they were born into, their thoughts, their feelings, their experiences. Unless you've had it all, it is very hard to know what it's like for them unless they're the expert in them, not us. You can say, well, this is what works for me, but everybody's different and it might not work for you. As I say, I worked a lot in addictions, and there are a lot of things that can be helpful, but you just got to be careful of going, well, a lot of people have found this helpful. It might help you, it might not, because you need people to know if it doesn't work, it's not their fault. I call it a treasure hunt, and I say, look, we can try lots of different things and we'll find what works for you. But don't, because it backfires most of the time. But also, they're not going to feel safe if they feel, because sometimes people say that without even, being asked. If I were in your situation, or I would never do that, or even thinking it. So we talked about judging, but let's be honest, we all cock up, we all screw up, we all do this, but it's about catching it. So one of the examples I was thinking for that one was, I've worked with a lot of people that, they've had court dates or they've had really serious safeguarding meetings or something like that, and they've turned up drunk. And we might be sat there going, why the hell would you do that? That's such an important thing, and you just made it worse. That is not understanding them, and that's not making them feel safe. Because what you've got to understand is actually the alternative for them probably was not turning up at all. Or the alternative and the stuff that it's bringing up for them, and the panic and the pain and all the trauma stuff that it brings up. You can't expect people to suddenly deal with that. But it is, unless you understand that, it can be so easy to go, what were you thinking? You have people, I've worked with a lot of people with alcohol problems, and they turn up drunk. I still sit down with them, even if it's for a short time. And even if they're not even going to remember seeing you, don't ever make them feel bad for it. There's a reason behind how people do it, and we need to build on it. Indulge them and do the poor you. And I quite often, even with ourselves, I'll say, because all of this applies to us as much as it applies to them, to the way that we treat our colleagues, the way that we treat our families, the way that we treat everybody. And I'm not saying we need to be perfect with everybody, because of course there are going to be people where we can be vulnerable and we can flip out and we know they're still there, but we've got that safety first. But with this, and I'll say, if you are angry or upset, find someone who will help you listen and help you process it rather than wind you up further. And this is exactly it. If someone comes in angry, you do not want to be winding them up and making them, well, yes, you should be angry and you should go tell them about it. And also the opposite, if someone, is really upset, you don't want to be going, oh my God, I don't know how you're going to cope, and that's really awful. And what, we need to be avoiding that. And again, it's so that some of these are so easy. That's why I'm saying it's a progress and it's a ongoing thing, and it's about catching yourself. Pick one of them. If somebody comes in and goes, and I remember it again with addictions at the beginning, especially people on methadone, and they'll come in and say, well, I had this appointment at the hospital, and the minute they saw I was on methadone, everything changed. And I'll admit, at the beginning, I'd be like, well, I'm sure it didn't. Have they just been paranoid? I didn't say it, but I felt it, which is just as bad. Until I talked to someone at a hospital and realised that it's more likely true, that they would have been treated differently. But if someone comes in and they're like, oh, this person ignored me, or they were a bit off with me, and you go, well, are you sure it's not you? I'm sure it's fine. It might be true. It might be that they're being paranoid, but you're much better off going, well, actually, why do you think that? Why do you think that? Why did you think? What's going on for you? Explore it rather than pass judgment. And ignore and be distracted. Typing on a computer while someone's talking is not good. I will say to people, just let me finish this and then I'll give you my full attention. Or I give you them my full attention and then I go back to the phone. But if you think about this in our life outside of work, how often do we do that? How often do you hear people say, carry on, I'm listening while you're making tea or while you're tidying up or while you... Do we give people our full attention? Obviously, if it's something trivial or, not 100%, but if somebody's sharing something with our clients, this is, I've had sessions where sometimes I've thought this is ridiculous getting paid for this. I've spent 15 minutes of a half an hour appointment talking about rubbish with people, conspiracy theories, dogs, TV shows, anything like that. And I'm thinking, God, if somebody was listening, I would probably get in trouble for this. But literally, you do it, and then the person will go, right, I've been thinking, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to change. This is what, because they've relaxed, they feel safe, they've got your attention, and they're ready to do the work. And you sometimes only need 5 minutes of them being in that state to get things moving. You've got to get them to that state. And ignoring people, God, ignore the behavior. No, don't ever ignore someone's behavior. So instead of all this, just a few things for you to start thinking about is, again, this comes from Brené Brown. What would support look like to you right now? When I've worked with teams, and quite often when people have, come in and they're upset about something or they're angry about something, and I'll listen and I will say, right, do you want me to forget you've just said that? Because sometimes we just want to rant and then we want to know, it's not going to be held against us, it's not going to be repeated. But sometimes we want people to act on it. Ask them. Listen to them, explore it, unpick it, ask them what they want. Don't decide for them. But also you can ask people, what helps you feel safe? What can I do? What are the things that, because sometimes it could be where we meet people. It could be the time of day. It could be the way the room is. It could be a smell. It could be quite often people will know. And if they don't, there are actually exercises you can do about exploring safety. Do it before you do anything else. Sometimes, I used to, when you do assessments, first time I ever meet people, not doing any paperwork, we are just chatting. And then we will get to the paperwork. And it still all gets done in quick time. Make people feel safe. People are anxious when they come in, just as we are. So what gets in the way? Just a quick, there's stuff, it's going to take time. Of course it is. And there's also barriers that we leave up, which Trauma Informed is all about looking at. But most of it's our stuff, and I've gone through a lot of this. We judge them. Their stuff, and this is where, it's about being safe in yourself. Their stuff's going to trigger us. If you've just had a bereavement and someone comes in and they're talking about a bereavement, of course it's going to affect you. So again, this is the sort of stuff we need to be training staff with. If you dislike, we're not going to like everybody, but actually in this job, we need to like everybody. We need to find a way around that. Nosy, I love that. In my psychotherapy training, and it was, just check whether you're asking someone because you're nosy or because it's relevant. People we're working with have such fascinating lives, but we just got to be careful about that. Power imbalance. I've not talked about that, but there's always a power imbalance. even not in work situations, if someone's been vulnerable, there's a power imbalance. But in work situations, it's even bigger because they're needing something from you. We've got to learn how to minimize that. And there are things you can do with that. Thinking we know best, we don't ever know best. What's best for someone else. I've talked a little bit about that. But also our beliefs. If we believe people always lie, if we believe someone's never going to change, if we believe people should behave differently without knowing their backstory, if we have a thing going, and I'll hands up, I came into this because I wanted to help other people and avoid my own stuff. I came into this quite literally because I didn't want people to feel pain I'd felt. Brilliant motivations, but you just got to be careful that that doesn't become a little bit distorted and end up running the show. We've also got our own survival behaviors, our own triggers. We all have ways of something they might do might remind us of something. I've talked about triggers. Boundaries, something I will get round to because I've not come across many places that do boundaries well. People have different boundaries. Sometimes the boundaries are too strong, sometimes they're too little. Us enforcing boundaries for people that don't even know what boundaries are or have had them violated, there's huge stuff around that. But unconscious bias, again, we're not talking about this stuff. There are some workplaces that do and that are absolutely brilliant. There are some that are not. And it's about making us feel safe enough to go, actually, was there some stuff came up? Was I a bit biased there? Being willing to look at it, us feeling safe enough to look at it in whatever area. Because again, we've all got bias, we can all do better. And if you think you haven't, that needs looking at. But also, if we don't feel safe, if we feel tired, if we feel pressured about outcomes, and sadly, there are times when it's right. Somebody once said to me, I've looked through your caseload to see which clients you need to be pushing towards discharge. And I've just been like, not a chance in hell. We discharge people when they're ready for discharge. We don't discharge people because we need targets meeting. Completely the wrong way around. And actually doing it that way usually hits, well, I've never had any problems hitting targets. When you're burnt out, when you're rushed for time, and we all have other ones, for me, in the hottest weather, I really struggle I always joke that I really struggle being trauma informed when I'm too hot. There are things when I'm hungry is a good one as well. But we've got to be aware of this because all these little things add up. Just a quick one on people we find difficult. There is no such thing as a difficult person. Just because you find them difficult, just because your whole team finds them difficult, there are other people that are going to find them easy. That just means that you have not learned the skills to deal with that person yet. You've not dealt with your stuff that's a barrier to dealing with that person. There are always going to, and let's face it, there are always going to be people that think we're difficult. There's no definition of what difficult is, as I say. And if we're in this work, we need to be growing to that point that we are able to deal with whatever we get. And to reinforce, I'm 100% about, and it's Byron Katie quote again, that the kindest thing we can do for people is stop them harming themselves or other people. But we've got to do it in a way that helps them heal and change, rather than reinforce and re-traumatizing and punish them for not feeling safe and not being able to do better. That's our job to help them with that. And it just reminded me of, I remember when I was on about trauma-informed stuff years ago at a place, and they said, we're not paid to deal with trauma. Every single one of our clients has trauma. So actually, if we're paid to help them, we are paid to deal with trauma. This is what we are paid to deal with. When we know better, we do better. So remember to see the pain behind the behaviour. I've just put that in there because, again, I've worked with people, I've seen it, I've probably had a little bit of myself, and I've certainly felt sometimes I have seen staff members lose the plot completely with clients. Not very dignified for us. It's not the end of the world, but also it's about actually let's catch ourselves and let's learn how to deal with this stuff because we're all human. And a quick there, it's a Bruce Perry stuff, but I think it's Beacon House do a great poster on it, the way you deal with it. I'm going to do a video on this at a later date, but you calm people down, you regulate, you make them feel safe, you connect with them, and then you talk about the behavior. You don't talk about it before they feel safe. You've got to get people feeling safe. You've got to work on that bit. So suggestions to improve. Think about everything we've gone through. What has stuck out to you? And also, what have you resisted? If there's anything in there that you've been like, oh, that's a load of rubbish, maybe it's worth exploring. What one thing that's come up, pick one small thing and go, how can I become more aware of it? How can I become more aware of the times when I am a little bit judgmental or I do struggle to connect with someone? And here are some things you can look at. What are the people and situations you feel negative about? What are the situations you dread, you feel annoyed, you resent, you feel anxious? If you go into a situation feeling like that, the other person's going to know. How can you learn? Because again, as workers, especially when you're doing this a long time, it helps us. It's good for us to keep growing. Who are the specific people you struggle to connect with? And that can be colleagues or clients, people we support, anybody. We can get better with everybody. How present are you? So when we're with people, usually in crisis, we can't often can cope because we're present. When we're with people, they can tell, and you can sense, most people can sense themselves. If you're talking to someone and their mind disappears, whether it's to the past or the future, or they're thinking of something else, you can usually tell. When someone's 100% focused, you can tell, and it feels better. How self-aware are you of your own emotional state? Do you have a way to acknowledge and process it? So again, it's not about acting out your emotions, but it is about being aware. And sometimes when you learn, and I've done this on other trainings, I'll do something another time, you can quickly just go in, oh, I feel really stressed, right? What can I do? How can I deal with this? And it goes. How safe are you with yourself? Do you trust yourself? So a big thing of this is, if you mess something up, if you do something wrong, which we all do, we all screw up, do you beat yourself up? Are you hard with yourself? Do you judge yourself? How can you feel safe enough that you can screw up and be okay? And I know how hard that is to get to that point. I'm still trying to get there myself. But the safer you feel with yourself, that has an influence on how safe other people feel. Mention this again. How do you manage other people's behaviours, keeping everybody safe, including the person that's behaving in an unsafe way? And read up on resources. I'm going to put a load of resources, but discuss it. Have a plan. Ongoing. This is stuff, as I say, ongoing improvement. You don't do it once. And it's some days you're going to be better than other. It's, something we have to keep. Do it as a team. Do it with someone you trust. Have a plan. And I'm just going to finish with services. So if there's people here who are listening who've got to the end that are running a service, you've got to know that if you've even got one member of staff that's unhappy or you think is a problem, they don't feel safe. And you need to prioritise. It is your job. If you've got a service, if you're leading a service, it is your job to create a safe environment. If you've got high turnover, if you've got a lot of people burnt out, it is majority of the time, it is about safety and support. I've burnt out a few times. It's never been about the clients. It's never even been about caseloads. And whenever I've talked about this with places and staff, most people agree. I've worked at places with twice the caseload I'm meant to have because I felt safe and supported. I've done okay. I've worked at places with half, and because I felt unsafe, it's burnt me out. We need to be ready for that. And this, let's be honest, if you cannot create a safe environment for every single member of staff, how are you going to create it for every single client? This is not impossible. This is what I work with people on. It is possible to do, but what you have to do is you have to decide this is a priority. I said this right at the beginning. We have to stop, paperwork, targets that are around the interventions that you do and the things that you provide. Where's relationships in that? What are the discussions? I've started doing a lot of reflective practice with organizations, and people are really resisting. A lot of people are not, and a lot of people are getting on board, but you resist because we're not prioritizing these relationships and making people feel safe. When you prioritize it, you've got to mean it and model it. So I know a lot of organisations that will say, yes, we put relationships at the heart of everything we do and we create safety. And I know people that work there that will disagree. And I know places I've worked at that have said that and I felt unsafe. We need to take this seriously and be open and willing to do better. Look at where you need to improve. Some of the things that I quite often say to people is organisations need to continually be asking, how can we do better? How can we can learn from other organisations and other professions? How can we make this the place that you as a worker can be the best you can be? Start doing that. It's not just about having more staff. And have a plan. Put there, ask how we can do better. Have a plan. Talk about staff. I quite often say, go in organisations and apologise and say, I'm really sorry. We should be doing, we should have done better, but we didn't know better. We do now. We want to make it the best place for you. Help us learn. And people would love to help you do that. Because if you have an organisation where your staff feel safe, you're not going to have high turnover. You're not going to have high burnout. You're going to get better results. And that will trickle onto the clients, which is what we do this work for. Here are some resources. There's a list, any book on trauma, anything. As I say, I'm not an expert. I just want to get you thinking about it. I just want to get you to start realizing how in depth this is so that there's hopefully nobody left thinking, well, if I'm just nice and kind, that'll be enough. Sometimes it is, but it's our job to be enough for every single person. I hope that's been helpful. Drop me a line if you've got any questions. And yeah, let's get the conversation going. I'm going to stop that. Thank you for listening.